Alright, what's going on everyone out there on YouTube, NES Ruler, and welcome to a brand new review. And this time we'll be checking out a film that was sent to me to review by Severin Films, and it is a title called Dr.Butcher M.D., also known as Zombie Holocaust Around the Rest of the World. And I have to say, this is a really interesting addition from Severin. You know, they release a whole bunch of just amazing films. But the fact that they were able to put this set together is really fantastic, because we have Dr. Butcher M.D., which was the United States cut of Zombie Holocaust that was released by Aquarius Releasing, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then we have, you know, the original film on here as well on a separate disc with a whole bunch of different features than Dr. Butcher. Is really interesting. So basically, this is just your typical Italian 1980 Grindhouse film. It's over the top, over violent, a lot of body parts flying, a lot of guts flying, just an insane film. And, you know, I was surprised. I was going into this thinking like, oh, I'm going to watch this and I'm going to hate it because it's low budget and it looks like crap and the filmmaking's poor. But actually, filmmaking is actually quite well done. Not like amazing, but at least it's put together like a movie. You know, the director actually had an idea of how to put together a film. You could actually see that. The shots were well done in some parts, and it wasn't shaky and crappy. You know, there's some continuity problems every once in a while, and there's some, you know, absolutely hilarious shots, especially one of this guy flying through a window down to the ground, and you could obviously tell that it was a doll or, you know, a dummy. So, you know, but besides that, it's actually a movie that you can actually watch and understand. It has a story, not a good story or not an amazing story, but it has a story, and basically that is that it takes place in a hospital in New York, and all of a sudden there's these cannibals eating the dead bodies that are brought into the hospital, and they have no idea why this is the case. So the doctors in the hospital try to figure out who these people are and why they're eating their dead patients, and they realize that the people who are eating these patients come from a cult called Quito, and Quito is a Southeast Asian island, and the doctors decide to go to Quito to try and find out who these people are and their history of their tribe and why they're coming to the United States and eating people. So basically they go to Asia, and they meet this doctor who lives there, who's been doing a whole bunch of research. As time goes on, you learn the doctor's shitty, and he's been, you know, performing experiments and zombies and cannibalism and all that. Pretty simple story for a Grindhouse film, but like I said, it's interesting and it's not boring. And, you know, that's basically it. You know, there's not too much more to say about this besides it's a cannibal film. But the gore is really top notch, and there's a whole bunch of guts and people eating guts and things like that. And of course, it's extremely racist to a Southeast Asian country. You know, if you guys want to learn more about that, I definitely recommend you guys check out Machete Maidens Unleashed, which is a really interesting documentary about different films that would shoot in Southeast Asia. You know, it's really interesting. So, you know, of course, in the Philippines. So that's basically about it. But the main reason why you should pick up this release is the features, and the features are just unbelievable on this release. I've watched every single one. It's just hours upon hours of features and entertainment with different kind of interviews relating to Dr. Butcher on the Dr. Butcher disc, and interviews relating to Zombie Holocaust on the Zombie Holocaust disc. I don't get into those right now. So I took a lot of notes because I wanted to make sure that I have everything down for you guys and what the features are about. So on the Dr. Butcher disc, we have an interview with Terry LaFine, and he is the owner of Aquarius Releasing. And this guy was basically a producer back in the day who had a theater on 42nd Street, and what he would do is he would pick up all these Grindhouse films that were getting released or, you know, were getting made, and he would basically try and re-edit them to make them more appealing to the mainstream audience that would come to 42nd Street. And if you guys know what 42nd Street is, it's a block in New York where all these theaters were, a lot of sleaze theaters, horror theaters, kung fu theaters, anything that you could imagine, and it was the dirty part of New York. Now it's really nice. But back then, you know, they would show all these different kind of films. So Terry LaFine was trying to find out how he could get more people to see films in his theater, and that's where he would start to buy these different films. and he would buy, he ultimately bought 32 pictures in 30 years, which would be like He and She, which I talked about in That's Exploitation, which is a documentary that I reviewed a little bit while ago, also released by Severin. And then he would do a lot of woman in prison films, Deep Throat, which everybody knows, Make Them Die Slowly, which is another gory, over-the-top type of film. And he also even released Silent Night, Deadly Night. So this is a really, really interesting 32-minute featurette with Terry LaFine talking about his empire, if you want to say, and how he ultimately brought these films to a mainstream audience. He ultimately had to cut the films, which is unfortunate, but he definitely made that appeal to mainstream audience. So Dr. Butcher M.D. ultimately ended up here in the States as an hour and 21-minute film. And then we have the uncut, a regular edition of the film, which ended up being an hour and 29 minutes. So we have 8 minutes of cut footage that Terry LaFine cut from the film. And on top of that, he added 2.5 minutes of bonus footage from this film titled Tales That Would Tear Your Heart Out, which was an anthology film that never got made. So he bought a 2.5-minute segment from that film, which had zombies and different things going on, and he tried to piece them together, and he added that to the beginning of the film. So that added 2.5 minutes. So really, it was an hour and 18 minutes of zombie Holocaust and 2.5 minutes of this unreleased anthology film. So the film was heavily cut, and I'll talk about the differences between the two cuts in a little while. So that's one of the features. The second feature, we have a 22-minute featurette looking at Down on the Deuce. And this is a look at the 42nd Street theaters as they are today. And it's just two guys who used to go to these theaters walking down the street talking about what they are today and what they were back then. And we see the architecture pretty much stays the same and things like that, but they're obviously cleaned up. So this was a really interesting feature to hear about how these theaters were dedicated to a different kind of genre and a different kind of fan base, and how many they were. It was really, really interesting featurette. So like I said, 22 minutes on that. And then there is a featurette about the Butchermobile. And this is an interview with Rick Sullivan, and he was the editor of the Gore Gazette back in the day, which was a fanzine that was from the 80s to the 90s. And basically, he would write about all these films that were playing on 42nd Street. And he ultimately became really good friends with Terry LaFine. And Terry LaFine approached Rick Sullivan to come up with an idea to promote this new film, Dr. Butcher. And what Rick Sullivan came up with was to have a long flatbed that said, with a Dr. Butcher banner on it. And what he would do, he would hire these actors, one to play Dr. Butcher, one to play the doctors and the nurse, and one to play the victim. And what he would do, he would park his flatbed on 42nd Street, and he would scream into a loudspeaker, and he would have this Dr. Butcher character murder this victim on the street. And he would do that for a week. And it's just interesting to hear how he almost got arrested and all this kind of stuff. So that was an interesting featurette. It's 12 minutes long. And then we have a featurette with the editor of Dr. Butcher and what he had to do, or what Terry LaFine asked him to do to the film, how they had to cut it and all this kind of stuff. It's interesting, it's 11 minutes. It's not the best feature on this release, but he talks about how he had to re-edit the sound effects and music and things like that. And then we have a text essay from Gary Hertz about 42nd Street, and this is basically just an essay that's on the menu, and you flip through it and you read it. It's okay, it's interesting. And then also you have the Tales That Would Tear Your Heart Out. We have the segment from the unfinished anthology film that was put in the beginning of the film that I just talked about a little while ago. So that is everything on the Dr. Butcher side of the release. And then we flip over to the zombie Holocaust side of the release, and then we have a boatload of more features. One, a 9-minute feature with Ian McCulloch, who was the main actor of this film, and how his career started, how he started out on Topping and all these prestigious films, then he ultimately ended up in Contamination and Zombie 2 and this film. So it was really interesting to hear about that, his experience on the film. So that was 9 minutes. And then we have Blood of Zombies. This is an interview with FX artist Rosario, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Prestapino. Kill me if I pronounce it wrong. It's a 23-minute featurette about his experience working on the film. At this time, he was an assistant. He wasn't, a huge star like he is now in the FX world. So basically his experience and him talking about the film and how the effects came to be and things like that. Interesting 23-minute featurette. And then we have an interview with another FX artist of the film. That one's shorter, 10 minutes. Really interesting to hear him talk about the film. And then we have a featurette with the actress Cheryl Buchan. And that's another like 12-minute type of featurette, hearing about her experience with the film. It's not as interesting as the one with Ian McCulloch, but it's still an interesting interview to listen to her side of the story and how she became part of this crazy film. And then we have a new look locations then and now, and this is like a look of the locations that were in the film in New York at the time and what they look like now. It's interesting, you know, it's another short featurette. And then we have Ian McCulloch Sings Down by the River, and then we have some trailers. So ultimately a really, really compact film with a boatload of features, and this really the main reason why did you pick up this release, simply because of the fact that it has so many amazing features and just a bunch of entertaining things if you're into Slee cinema and 42nd Street cinema and things like that. Just an amazing release in that sense. And overall, just a nice release. We have reversible cover art if you guys are into zombie Holocaust instead of Dr. Butcher. I like Dr. Butcher. And then we have the 2 discs, Dr. Butcher on 1 disc and zombie Holocaust on the other disc. And then it comes with this barf bag if you guys are the first 5,000 people to buy it. Just awesome. I love when companies include this in releases. Ultimately, the picture quality is not very good, I have to say, which is disappointing. You know, Severin usually does a really good job cleaning up films, but ultimately you have to remember this type of film and what it is. It wasn't taken care of that well, and basically they found a print in New York and in Rome. Of course, New York for Dr. Butcher and Rome for Zombie Holocaust. They tried the best they did. The results aren't that amazing, you know. It's really grainy. It's hard to see a lot of the time, but it's definitely watchable, and it's probably the best the film has ever looked. I've watched the trailers, and you could see the big difference. So that's unfortunate. The sound is what it is. It's dubbed, absolutely hilariously dubbed, but, you know, that's the way these films were made. So ultimately, overall, just a really interesting package. I would just recommend it simply because of the features, and if you're into Grindhouse cinema, I would definitely grab it as well for that. But I really enjoyed digging into this one. I learned a whole bunch of stuff about 42nd Street that I really didn't know before, and that featurette with Terry LaFine is just amazing. So thank you again, everybody, for watching my review. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/NESRuler22. I hope everybody's doing well, and I'll talk to you guys in a little bit. See you guys.